Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our session with IBM and AT&T today. AT&T accelerates IT transformation with Agentic AI. We'll discuss how IBM is using Agentic AI to accelerate IT transformations for ourselves and our clients. You'll hear directly from AT&T on how they are partnering with IBM plus Microsoft to scale Agentic AI across their enterprise. So I'd love to introduce our first speaker today, Miha Crawl. Come on out, Miha, and we'll give him a hand.
Much appreciated. I'm really glad that you had find time to actually join us today at the presentation. I believe that together with Mark and Srini, we have a couple of very good insights to share with you and kind of share the story that we actually created, and you're going to hear about IBM as a customer zero, how we already doing agentic type of distributed solutions for our own and then of course for our clients for quite some time. So it's very interesting to see that this is the first year that not a single engagement that we are doing in IBM Consulting is actually engagement without AI. So we don't do like AI engagement and then data engagement or infrastructure engagement. Practically this year, I believe that all of the core engagements are AI enabled and AI supported and either use AI tools to deliver, but even more importantly, AI becomes part of the delivery, part of the solution that we deliver to our clients. And we see that across the whole board. And most of the messages that you're going to hear from all of us today is how this is not a novelty anymore. I know that you're hearing that a lot from many different speakers across this whole event, but agentic AI solutions are now truly becoming a mainstream, and it is a true transformation just from the angle that this is the first time in the history of IT where business can actually get direct benefits before IT on their own actually puts all of the ducks in the row. We built for years and years and years all of the foundational blocks. We first created all of the infrastructure required assets and databases and networks and security. We added all of the application development and product engineering on top. And now it's the time to actually see development engine and the business growth engine to collaborate together and bring all of those advancements together. So in IBM, we kind of see that there are two parts of that mission to make a modern enabled enterprise, just like, for example, when Microsoft talks about the frontier organizations. On one side, we are talking about how to make AI right, and this is very technology-focused story. How do we make the right automation? How do we make actually the right training for humans that they know how to use all of those things? But on the other side is actually finding the right use cases, doing the right AI, and find that return on investment that can actually prove that these investments into AI solutions are properly spent and they are getting the right return as we look at them. Particularly when it comes to, for example, the AI literacy in large organizations, one of the crucial factors that we are going to hear a lot also later, both by Mark and by Srini, the crucial success factor of doing the right AI is that we train people as much as we give them those new agentic systems. Digital agents are now becoming part of teams. So every human, like we have bosses of AI agentic systems, we need to train people to become that type of the digital workforce managers way more than anything what we did in the past when we just used those smart systems as being our helpers, whisperers, and supporters. So time of using AI as a little chatbot on a side that just recommends is over. And instead of that, we are coming to an era where we're giving higher and higher autonomy of full autonomous execution to agents and actually treat them, and that's what we are doing in IBM, treat them as an actual valuable members of our teams. Every team becomes a mixture of humans and digital workers, and that mixture depends where in the life cycle and what type of a task it is, but making those things right is actually quite hard. It requires lots of investment, and it requires lots of very rigorous and controlled leadership as well. Inside IBM, we do have our own large research unit. We call them Institute for Business Value. For people that never heard of them, you can go and download a whole bunch of their research papers and reports that are available. But one of the research units that is about to be published focused across 1,000 early adopters, enterprises. Where is the investment going? How much do enterprises really spend? And who is spending money to make those large-scale enterprise agents run right? So make AI right and making it the right way. One of the interesting things is that we see that wallets are actually now becoming highly distributed. It's no longer, capital is not directly concentrated. Very frequently, AI is so important for enterprises that, for example, CFO or even allocated chief AI officer becomes the owner of the budget. But numbers, how much capital is going into all of that, is not just quite large. So what we found out is about 4% of the total IT budget goes directly into this, but it is rising up towards the 7%. And if you ask me, in the near future, it's going to be even more than that. So AI is becoming a very significant portion of the pie of the IT budget invested into all of this. And when we are looking into the overall AI spending, not so much how much we invest to build the stuff as a proportion of the IT budget, but how much is it then burned on tokens, burned on platforms, burned on professional services delivered to all of that, is jumping even higher up, and it's currently at around 30%. So it all shows that enterprises that IBM is working with are taking this whole thing very, very seriously. And we started the AI journey very, very early. For people that obviously know, IBM is one of the few global system integrators that actually has our own model. We have a Granite out there, and we have also our own platform. And we are already doing AI for ourselves, but also for our clients way longer than anybody else, and can actually then share huge amount of insights how all of that needs to be put together. So when it comes to how to build systems, we kind of see it being chunked into 3 big portions. All of them need to be well aligned together. You heard me before talking about putting the infrastructure components together. And although it looks like it's the first building block in here, I would say it's kind of at the bottom of the whole stack. The most important, what we are seeing in IBM, is to actually start on the right side of this picture. So what is the business angle in here? Who needs to use that? What are those digital workers, the agentic systems that we are going to first produce, enable, allow them to talk to each other, and then allow them to talk to humans? How do we train humans to do that? And with that, getting to, for example, inside IBM Consulting, we have now over 1,600 business-relevant, active, production-ready agents that are all available to our consultants for internal usage and consumption. All of that needs to be built. So that's why that whole very strong product engineering capability that you see in the middle is absolutely crucial. These are very, very new things that we are building together, and we are building them the new way. For people that don't know, even inside Microsoft and GitHub. On GitHub, for example, GitHub itself, the AI, GitHub Copilot, is a #1 contributor of the code into the repo on its own. We are seeing that contribution on product engineering building with AI, but also the target of the build is an AI agentic-enabled system. All of that is now seemingly coming together. And then, of course, coming back to infrastructure, which again, the whole approach to infrastructure also is getting AI infusion. Every single component, security with AI, doing the proper monitoring with AI, and doing all of the parts. So kind of historically, we did have the component 1 and component 2, and we built nice from microservices and all of the other architectures in the past. But now everything dramatically changed in a very few years in the past, because AI is not just the target, AI is now becoming also the element that builds all of those new modern solutions. So here's the question, how do we do it, right? What is our process? This is super oversimplified, how we are going all the way from context to discovery, which needs to be way more precise and non-ambiguous. So AI systems can understand it, that can then help us to first go through the proper business process design, going through the proper data alignment. And one of the things that we are finding is that, for example, humans do understand and interpret the data in data sources their own way. And if you don't actually drive the proper governance and discipline, AI systems will interpret the data differently. And suddenly you are getting something completely different out from the expectations. All the way to how to drive operational synchronization, and not to forget that once we get out on the other side, where are the goods, right? What is the benefit of the AI? Did we just create the same stuff like what we used to do with microservices, but now every microservice is replaced with an agentic system? That would not make sense. So how do we actually validate that all of that works right, and works right consistently through time? Not just we created a pilot and yay, it works, and then kind of a move to the next one. These are all of the core set of processes and building blocks. So what do we get out from this? Inside IBM, we are using Copilot, and we created IBM Consulting Advantage Copilot agent that every consultant in IBM Consulting has at their own disposal. And it's quite interesting to see when our own people are able to unlock 100 years of knowledge within IBM systems that is all properly indexed and accessed through smart agentic network, and very much increase the speed ridiculously many X times factors. We did practical actual analysis of asking consultants to, for example, do the analysis of a client and the industry, find the best strategic advice for them, and typically something that on average would cost several hours of intense search and filtering, looking into a PowerPoint decks, looking into the industry research papers, looking into the past engagements of the client, kind of reduces down to 5 to 10 minutes, and getting exactly the same deep insights that are all locked in IBM systems straight out from that. So the quality of responses we are getting, and also our expectation on calculation where the productivity gains are, is unprecedented compared to any other enablement. So we are a customer zero for a frontier organization ourselves, but we are also doing that enablement for all of the others as well. So our number one mission is, of course, to help and serve clients. And that's why I'm actually very happy. I will ask Srini to come by and introduce our honorable guests today, our clients, to tell you how we are doing that for and with others. Srini.
Hey. Thank you, Miha. That was insightful, and hope you got the phrase, do AI right with right AI. Folks, my name is Srinivas Jayanti, and I'm the overall leader for AT&T engagement. AT&T is the top tier platinum client for IBM. We do lots of transformation work. So here today we want to share some of the transformation that's currently going on at AT&T. And we have brought in a client, senior most client from AT&T, Mark Austin. He is the VP for data science. Hundreds of developers and data scientists work for him. He is very, very well known in AT&T community and also in the industry. As we deal with many other clients, we have seen very closely how Mark runs this at AT&T. Phenomenal work. He has built some very cool stuff called Ask AT&T platform. You'll hear directly from him. He has authored many books, and guess what? He has 100+ patents. So that speaks volumes. Okay, team, please welcome Mark Austin.
All right, good afternoon. Thanks, Srini. Appreciate your partnership. So I wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about our journey. We've been doing this, from, I remember Christmas 2022, we saw this new model, and it was pretty amazing at what it could do. And immediately we said, we have to start providing this to our employees, and we have to start building on this thing. And we came up with this, what are we going to call this? We had a variety of different names, and they basically said, you're going to call it Ask AT&T. And I was like, okay, but it doesn't really know AT&T yet, okay? So we need to teach it about AT&T. So we've been teaching it since then. And our first POC, our first use case, was in early 2023 that we put RAG on top of a chatbot for att.com, and we cut the fallout rate in half. So that was our first use case. So we've been growing it ever since. Here's some of the numbers in terms of what we have. Of course, we have all the employees on it, the 100,000 plus employees. We're doing about, actually I found out yesterday, it's about 10 billion tokens a day. So those are essentially words that are passing through this. Now, when you're doing that amount of scale, you need to do it economically. So what we typically do is we look for what are the top use cases, summarizing care, classifying things, and we say we have to fine tune those things. We want to get the cost down. Now, you need to do it well, so you got to keep the accuracy up, okay? So accuracy costs, and then if it's a small model, you typically get latency as well. And it's very rare that you can get three things. If you think of accuracy as good, latency is fast, and cost is cheap, you typically say, I can get 2 out of the 3, but I can't get 3. But with this one, you actually can, okay? So you fine tune it, you get the good, you get the fast, the latency, and you get the cheap as well with the cost. So when we do that, we typically see 90% cost reduction on those things. So we have at least 91, I think it's probably more than that now, Gen AI use case in production. We started with coding way back when, if I think about it, that's what really got us excited. But coding has been huge. I think you heard just a minute ago is how they use it for kind of, IBM uses it as well. Now, the other thing is, when you think about agents, agents have access to tools. They have access to documents, and you want to do your RAG, your question and answer really well. But in big kind of corporations, you also want to give them access to data. And one of the things that's particularly hard is unless you narrow it down to a few tables that are really known, you're going to have challenges with it hallucinating, right? You're going to have challenges when you ask this question, is like, what column is it actually pulling? It doesn't know, okay? So you have to be really careful of that. So we put a lot of time in being really good at text to SQL. We've been #1 7 times on competing on that. I'm going to show you on the next slide there. Now, all this is great, and we all get productivity, but at the end of the day, you need to deliver on the ROI, and we've been 2x ROI in free cash flow. Now, let me show you this, because this is important for agents. These are 3 charts here, and I'm going to explain these in a second. But accuracy on RAG, that's kind of the first thing. That's pretty common. Coding is important as well. But some of these things, the text to SQL is super important. I think most of the agent stuff, if I think about finance transformation, it's all about the numbers, right? So it's all about picking the right databases. And those first 2 charts are kind of external benchmarks. And you can see, and it might be hard to read, but you've got Google, IBM is on this one too, IBM, Alibaba, and others. We're all competing on this to try to get as accuracy as possible. And these are really hard. These are, like that first one's the BIRD benchmark, 12,700 questions that you have to get right across 95 databases, okay? That's the level of that thing. Now, fortunately, inside of AT&T, you don't need to do that. If you have your agent, you can say, well, I know you need to worry about these 5 tables, okay? So when you do that, we're typically 95% or better on the accuracy, okay? So these are hard, but this is where you can kind of test your algorithm. The second one is the SPIDER benchmark as well. Now, the last one is the farthest one to the right is we want to be the best on telco. And here's an example of the good, fast, and cheap. What you're seeing there, that's our model. That's a 4 billion parameter model that beats GPT-5, it beats Claude, and it beats Grok, okay? So very, very useful. Now, what does this model do? This model is a root cause analysis model, okay? So if you have low throughput on your phone, what is the cause? Okay, so it's predicting what is the cause so we can go fix the network. That's what this one does. So those are some examples. Now, let me show you a little bit of the ecosystem, okay? Now, we're big. We certainly have lots of partners, lots of vendors. And the way that we think about Ask ATT, our Gen AI platform, is that we kind of have patterns. And this is one thing when somebody says, well, how do you start? How do you kind of do these things? I always recommend find the common patterns of your use cases and use those. Put those on your platform, whether it's on Microsoft or you've got your own thing. So of course, asking questions of documents, we call that Ask Docs. Asking questions of data, that's the text to SQL. You're going to be building workflows. You're going to be building agent things. So you're going to have an agent as well there on the right. In the middle, that's your agent workflow as well. And you're going to have to tie into different things, right? Some things are just natural. Microsoft, we got a ton of Microsoft, right? So Copilot is a natural, right? It knows everything. It knows your Teams. It knows your SharePoint. That's going to be super natural. So you're going to want that for productivity also. And then you're going to have, probably if you're like us, there's other partners that you'll have, right? So this is why the industry came up with A2A. Agents are going to talk to agents. So you're going to have your agents talk to other agents as well, and that's kind of that last part on the right there as well. So it's a little bit complicated. You got a lot of stuff going on, but that's kind of what we have to think through as we go. All right. So if you think about workflows and you think about agents, you have different customers. And if you think about us in terms of builders. And you have the builders that are the non-coders, and then you have the builders that are coders. All of my folks are coders, right? And what we said, this is before Copilot. I was really excited to see that there's a nice builder thing with Microsoft put out in this conference. But before they had that, we had to come up with something. And we came up with this drag and drop workflow on top of our agentic system. So we have a pro code platform in the back, and we built this no code drag and drop type thing to build these workflows. And you can see kind of a flow chart there. I think that's a deep research kind of agentic workflow. And you can make these things as complicated as you want, right? So I've seen things with 5 agents, 10 agents, multiple tools. Most of the time, though, you're going to see most of your applications, if it's like ours, you don't have to go that complicated, okay? Most of the time, we see 1 or 2 agents and a few tools, and you can kind of get away with that. And then the next thing is have a super agent try to figure out what tools do you add. You don't even need a flowchart in that case. But you'll probably want something like this. Now, here's an interesting story. So we built this drag and drop thing, and we certainly have a pro code in the back. And I held a hackathon 3 months ago, and I had it with all of our pro coders because we were going to launch it for the whole company. And I was like, okay, we're going to have a hackathon. I'm pretty sure they're not going to want this thing. They're going to build their own thing. Give me the pro code and go away. It was really interesting. I had 380 of them in this big room. And we had a hackathon for 3 days. First day, everybody built something. Next day, they were kind of competing in teams. I was surprised more than half of the pro coders used the no-code piece for their submission. And it was pretty interesting. Some of these guys had some pretty complicated things. But I would not rule out kind of the no-code stuff, even for some of your pro coders as well. Now, the nice thing is this one here, when you build it in no-code, it writes the code for you, okay? So the no-code will give you the code, and then you can kind of jump off and you can kind of do other things too. But anyway, we think this is an important piece of the ecosystem to satisfy all the parties there. Now, one of the other things, I'm kind of going through to give you a little bit of the things that we're working through to kind of bring it a bit practical here. You're going to want to kind of, how do I build this thing? How do I democratize as much as possible, give everybody the tools, but keep it secure? Okay, so we have 3 steps, and you can have different ones if you want, but this is what we do. So we have a learning platform. So think of this as pro code, and we kind of have that one locked down. It really doesn't have external world, but you can build anything you want there, and you don't really need permission, okay? You're in there, and you could kind of play. So we sometimes call it permit to play, permit to learn. The next thing is permit to build, and that's where we have a little bit of governance. When we build stuff for our 2X to keep our finance folks happy, is we have to kind of prove the ROI. So you kind of get kind of back of the envelope business case, and then you have to kind of show what are you actually going to do? What do you intend to build? So we have some level of advice for what you need to do. Do you need human in the loop to kind of protect things? And I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. Or are you going to use standard MCPs that we already have? Okay, so that's the next one, permit to build. The last one, and I think Agent 365 is starting to do some of this stuff, is you want to have a lot of scrutiny before you put something in production. And what we have is what we've been building is agents checking other agents. So think of it as red teaming. So when somebody has some code, it's going to look in and say, hey, do you got something sensitive data? Is there also something that's going external? Do I need a human in the loop? And it's going to flag a variety of different things, okay? So that last one, and this is what we've been building. Sometimes you do this platform, you're trying to satisfy all the questions your security officer is going to give you. And we had 10 pages that we tried to cover here, right? So that's just a little bit, and that's the last one, the kind of the permit to operate there. Now, just to show you, some of the things that these agents checking other agents are looking for. This is just to give you a flavor, but literally there's dozens of these things that we need to do, okay? So for simple stuff, low risk, an MCP, just calling a tool, okay, there's no issues there, okay? An agent can do delete, okay, that's medium risk, okay? So you need to, how are you checking? How are you making sure? This is the whole thing you're going to hear about evals. Evals are incredibly important. And we almost are starting to require evals. Show us this thing is doing what you expect it to do, and let's kind of grade this thing. And then the one on the right is the one I mentioned before, okay? So an agent has access to internal data, sensitive data, external, goes out to the web, does deep research, and you want to make sure you're protecting potential exfiltration. And that's where we kind of require human in the loop for those type of things there too. So that's kind of the hazard spectrum. This is just a picture of, this is tiles here, and these are like all the checks that the agents are going through to check these other agents, just to give you a feel. Now, building workflows is the next thing that we're in the middle of, and we're trying to say, what actually can we build? What are all the opportunities there? And these, if I think about different areas of the business, and these are the steps that you see in traditional, the first step is what we call blueprinting. The blueprinting is really, what actually do you do, okay? What do you do in your workflow? You have this thing in your area of the business, where do you get data from? How does it hand off from there? What does it access? Where does it go? That is a lengthy process. So that is the hardest part right now is understanding what these things are. And then you go on, and the bars there is like the length of time, okay? Then you got design, build, deploy, okay? Now, the nice thing is that we're starting to find that we can use AI to help us on those things too. And some of my colleagues are actually saying, I'm not gonna have to interview everybody. If I can get them on a Teams call, I can kind of record it. I can see all the systems they're accessing. I can see what buttons they're clicking. I can try to automate that thing. So AI to kind of build that flowchart, okay? And then you can figure out what agents and tools do you actually need to do. And the next thing you do is you can find common patterns. So that's this agnostic workflow. So instead of everything being a different flowchart, find a common thing and then put it into that workflow, and you're to speed that one there. And then have agents doing all the testing and be very rigorous on that in eval, and then you can get to that last step, which is the deployment. So the last thing I'll just share is kind of some examples, okay? So these are some of the examples. The first one is that everybody has root cause analysis, ticket resolution, whatever you want to call it, okay? Whether you have applications or you run a network like us, you always have those things, okay? This is perfect for agents. What do the agents need to do? They need to get a ticket, correlate it with other documents, pull data from logs, pull an architecture, reason across those things, and come up with a recommendation, right? Super common across all this. Care is kind of where we started. That's kind of an obvious one. HR, some of these other processes this is perfect for workflows, Okay, HR, finance, and then you'll have a lot of the Ask Data things there too. Some of the favorite things I see in supply chain is we have a rebate checker agent. I think I mentioned it before in this conference, right? So it's amazing, you have all these contracts that like you should be getting the rebates. Are we actually getting the rebates? Let's have an agent check that. So super useful too. And then productivity, of course. So those are some examples, and just to kind of round it out, I'm going to invite Srini from IBM back to talk about a real use case that they implemented with us as well.
Okay. Folks, like Mark said, there is a significant push happening with accelerating IT transformation through Agentic AI. In addition, both IBM and AT&T working together to democratize the AI. We are building solutions that can be given to the agents, to the end users, to the operating staff in the work centers, not only to the developer community. That's a significant push currently going on. So I would like to take a few minutes here, explain about how the things are going on in the IT community that we serve AT&T as a client. First, we are partnering with Microsoft. We took all of the mission-critical portfolios that AT&T has today into the cloud. Right? We have spearheaded all the transformation work. Second, we're also pushing, there's a lot of adoption that's currently going on with the Copilot usage. Every developer, all of the practitioners that we have globally, they all have to really go through and mandatory certifications, badges, right, enablement, and also a culture shift. Because the way the things are done in the past, the way things are done today and in the future are way different. I'll give you a very classic example. I'm sure you're seeing this on the ground. If you have folks in the industry who have been veterans, right, who have been in the field for a long time, they take a lot more time to adapt to the new way of doing things. But if you bring college associates, you'll see they're very fast, very quick in adoption. So I think this is a significant change. I think that's a culture that we are trying to bring in and mold the folks in driving this in a faster pace. We're also partnering with AT&T in enabling the trust and governance. There is a watsonx governance that's currently being deployed, and so that it's just not scaling the solutions, but also the governance is put in place. What you can see here, some of the metrics. Again, this is just specific to AT&T. Again, globally, that we do a lot more things. Now, we have hundreds of squads supporting IT solutions that we deliver. As part of this, you can see that Copilot, right, Copilot Studio, Ask AT&T platform, and there is a set of GenAI solutions that are adapted back in the industry, back in the day-to-day workforce. So this is not just adapted by the developers, but I think you can start from the business analyst writing the requirements, doing the reverse engineering of the code, right from there, going into the Scrum Masters who will generate all the reports, right? And developers, obviously we know the code generation, right? Testing, test case generations. So I think including the deployment, right? Writing the production deployment scripts. All of this is leveraged through Copilot as well as the Ask AT&T Agentic AI platform. What we are seeing here, again, this is changing by a day, I would say, right? Currently, we are seeing almost 30-35% productivity improvement. Now, we were in some discussions yesterday with some senior leadership teams. The solutions that we are putting in place today, probably they're good for 6 months. Because the way the things are evolving now, there's probably even better ways to do it. So today what we are seeing, probably you'll see much more productivity improvements going forward. So this is the broad life cycle that is, that can be adapted across the industry, driving the IT solutions. I'll give you another example. Mark talked about there are 100, probably, there are many use cases that's currently AT&T is deploying, right? Could be HR, procurement, trouble ticketing, and many other solutions. One of the solutions that we are supporting AT&T is rolling out the AI transformation, AI ops transformation for the end workforce, work center users. There are about close to anywhere 80 to 100,000 workforce agents, right? They use systems in order to serve their end clients, right? It could be pre-order booking, order booking, provisioning, going up to billing. As part of this entire activity to run the show every day, in a month, anywhere 15 to 20,000 tickets are generated, right? Some tickets can be information only, like how to do things. Some tickets can be really a order fallout, or some trouble, some data inventory mismatches or something, right? So this is really manually intensive to correct that. And you have, just to fix those things, you have hundreds of support technicians involved looking into the systems, which is super expensive. So this is where we are leveraging Copilot Studio as well as the Power Automate. We're also leveraging the Ask AT&T platform that Mark and team created, right? Specifically the Ask Docs. And we have put in solutions now, which is again enabled through Teams, right? There's no other interface it comes through Teams. And this is currently rolled out to the agents. And as you can see, there's almost like 18,000 plus manual touch points automated, which is again, I would say about 30-35%. Obviously, there are more touch points, more manual stuff can be automated, which is quite an evolving process. This supports, this current thing has been rolled out for all of the 100% of critical products that AT&T has in the B2B space. Now, those of you supporting especially to the telco clients, right, you will know any billing disputes, billing disconnects, right? All of these are big business issues. Now, there are solutions being put in for each of this, but as we foresee this, all of this AI ops will come together end to end, right? You no longer have to do anything manual transformations. You will transform through automation. You'll also give these agents back into the work center agents, right? As a self-serve functionality. So lots of transformation going on. Again, productivity numbers are probably illustrative because we are seeing more and more things changing every day, and with the more tools being evolved. Now, this is just one of the classic case. Again, we are also supporting in lot other areas, but I thought this was probably something interesting that you could take it from here. So I think that's what we wanted to cover. We wanted to tell you that a lot of this AI solutions being rolled out within IBM as a client zero. We call it as a client zero. It's a public. There is a billions of dollars cost takeout is happening in IBM through AI automation, Agentic AI solutions. It's public. It's there in the things that we report to the street. Now, we're also taking those solutions back to the clients. And you heard from Mark today, the transformation initiatives that he is rolling out in AT&T. Again, hundreds of millions of dollars transformation programs enabled through the AI, Agentic AI solution that Mark and team are working on. Phenomenal progress AT&T is making, every day. So, and IBM is integral part of this entire solutions. All right, so with that, let me invite back Mark and Miha to see if you have any questions here.
We have a few minutes for questions, and I will be the first one asking both of you. Mark, first, I would like to hear from you in a very practical sense on a use case that you choose. Walk us through that golden path from here is an idea all the way to now we run it in production.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so I guess if I was to think of the ones that can get to production the fastest are the ones that are the easiest to approve from all aspects, right? So if I think about it, your ROI is pretty obvious. That should be easy to prove. And then you have low risk. You think about, because think of everybody that's approving, right? So governance, you have security, you have privacy, you have legal, and you have the finance folks, and you have architecture there. So from an architecture point of view, it uses our platform, uses the common components. Security, it's lower risk. And then finance is pretty obvious, and then it doesn't have legal or other ones, right? So to check all those things, it's a quick, easy thing through the path. Now, whether or not those are the highest value ones, you know, have to see, but those are easy ones to get through.
Awesome. Srini, for you.
I want to add to that. Mark made it very simple. Frankly, that's it's a complex issue because you have different business units coming out with different asks. Probably one solution will really fit into all of that. We don't want really each of the business units to go and develop, separately. So Mark has a governance board that actually evaluates all these requests coming in. I know this team does an incredible job in evaluating those solutions and making sure they're not duplicated, right? That's even more expensive. So.
Yeah, reuse is important.
Yeah. Srini, as a partner that helps large enterprise deliver very complex agentic workflows and agents for their own, what are your 3 advices to somebody that would also like to elevate their own business in this domain?
I think, technology is changing big time, right? Adaptation to technology is very natural, but the thing that will differentiate is your domain understanding, business understanding. To put any of the solutions that I've talked about, AI ops solutions into the field and really understand, you really have to grow the skills in the business. I think that's really the most important one.
To project in the future, Mark, we are going to be, I hope, here together next year. What to expect in this world that we are actually now, both companies are on that frontier of progression of the agentic AI. What do you think is next?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. I think before the conference, there was a little bit of debate as whether we're in the year of agents or the decade of agents. I heard something new that came up is like, this is the year of agent, next year will be the year of agents. What I'm hoping for next year is that we have some amazing use cases that everybody is sharing on multi-agents type of thing, and we have the evaluation done very well, and we're checking these things, and we have great ROI. So that's what we hope for.
Srini?
Well, I think I'll echo to what Mark said. I think year of agents, day of agents, I would say, every day we are learning new stuff and new things to implement. Yeah.
Awesome. And with that, I definitely hope that you learned something new here. We are going to be available if there is any question in the audience also to answer right now. Otherwise, I do invite you all to come and join us at IBM booth in the area if you did not visit it yet. And of course, reach to any of us if you have any additional questions. We are welcome to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.